Hello, beautiful, sensitive soul. Welcome to Surviving to Thriving, just for folks like you, highly sensitive folks. And we come together every week to talk about all kinds of ways to go from just struggling and feeling frustrated to really thriving, and doing that by using a bunch of tools, but also embracing the trait and everything that it brings to us. So I'm so glad to have you as always. I'm Tammy Goen, your host and guide, and I work with a lot of highly sensing folks in my coaching practice, and just love to get this word out so that any of you that are out there feeling overwhelmed, feeling less than, feeling frustrated with your sensitivity, that hopefully that will shift and you can find it as an amazing part of your life. So today we are continuing a topic about mindset and shifting that. And specifically today, comparisons and expectations of HSPs, highly sensing people. And I wanted to start with a quote, but instead of having me share my screen and having you just look at something on the screen, I want to make it a somewhat experiential if I can, and really make an impact. I found a really, really lovely quote that I love. If you're not familiar with Glennon Doyle, I recommend her work. She's a pioneer and just really great for, self-compassion and being authentic. And I'm going to pick a quote from her semi-recent book, Untamed. So recommend checking that out if you would like. And this quote comes from that book as she's talking about her daughter, Tish. So what I thought I would do is just, if you're okay wherever you are, if you can do this, just go ahead and close your eyes, take a deep breath and just let this quote sink in. Tish is sensitive, and that is her superpower. The opposite of sensitive is not brave. It's not brave to refuse to pay attention, to refuse to notice, to refuse to feel and know and imagine. The opposite of sensitive is insensitive, and that's no badge of honor. And just reading that, and you can open your eyes if you have them closed, of course, just gave me little tingles, and it's so appropriate. I mean, everything in there about that idea of, feeling weak or inadequate if we acknowledge our sensitivity, when really it's being brave and strong and powerful, and we can own that power rather than feeling less than. And then these key terms like refusing to feel and know and imagine, those are things that we do, right? At a very deep level, we feel, we know things, and we imagine a lot of that other people that aren't highly sensing just don't even consider or not aware of or come up with. But for us, that's integral to being highly sensing. It's about paying attention and giving meaning to all of those things that we pay attention to. And so I just love that quote because it just packs everything in to that couple phrases, sentences that are so impactful if we really take them to heart. So I hope you are able to do that, and that closing your eyes and letting that come in really, made it that much more impactful. So let's talk about those beliefs, these ideas that we need to be different. So there's all manner of thoughts that we might have rolling around in there, from all the things that we've heard growing up, all of the experiences that we've had with each person in our adulthood, in our families, in our social situations. We will start to believe, and after hearing these things like, I'm not okay, just period. I'm not okay as a highly sensing person because it's not the norm. And if you're new to discovering that this is even a trait that other people share, that's a big deal too. Just realizing that that's just how I am, and that's okay because there are all these other people that are experiencing this same thing. And another thought that comes up is that I need to change myself somehow, or somehow be fixed. And sometimes people think that's even with some kind of a pharmaceutical, that they have to go and get a prescription for something so that they're not feeling so anxious or so frustrated or overwhelmed. And again, that is not the reality, not what's needed. There's this idea that no one will understand me or accept me as I am, if I'm authentic, if I am who I really am, and let my sensitivities show, I will not be accepted. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't cases when people do have a hard time with that and challenge us, but we can learn to cope with that and share who we are in a way that can be accepted. But that whole idea, that underlying belief that I really am not okay who I am, that's a big challenging one that we need to address. And there are other thoughts like, I need to be just like everyone else. I need to suck it up and be in the mainstream, not stand out as something or someone different. And then just generally that it's not okay to be so sensitive or very sensitive or highly sensitive. This idea that sensitivity itself somehow is wrong or bad or weak and needs to go away, be fixed, be taken care of. And the reality is sensitivity is amazing. And there are lots of statements out there that we could use that show that it is a positive thing. You know, I'm sensitive enough to notice whatever that is. Or someone who's in a relationship, you know, might notice and say, oh, I love how you're so sensitive to my needs. You know, there are lots of ways that that is positive, but in this culture, we tend to see more of that belief that that's not okay because it's not the norm. So getting rid of that need to be just like everyone else is so, so key. And we need to remember that this is the way we are wired. We didn't choose to be overly dramatic or ridiculous or whatever those things are that you might have heard and eventually come to believe about yourself. Those are not accurate. We are just wired to be more sensitive. And if you've heard me talking before, this isn't a surprise to you, but you know, they have done all kinds of research with different animals, over 100 at this point, showing that they also have a certain percentage, probably similar to ours, you know, somewhere 20 to 30%, that are more highly sensing. And that's a tool that is used that helps to perpetuate and keep safe the herd or the, you know, the groups of whatever those animals are. That could also be your pets, dogs and cats, you know, they can be highly sensitive, but it's there for a reason, or it wouldn't still be here after so many years. So recognizing, acknowledging, yes, I'm wired this way, so it's an okay thing. You know, I'm right-handed or left-handed, I'm highly sensing, I'm not highly sensing. That's the reality. So if we let go of this idea that it would be really best if I could just be not sensitive, or at least less sensitive. And, you know, all of these statements that I've mentioned are really powerful in a kind of a damning way, you know, a way of just making us feel horrible, versus flipping that, you know, reframing those to something positive that can make us, you know, feel uplifted is really the goal. But when I look at those statements, especially things like, no one will understand me or like me if I'm as I am, or if I'm authentic. I mean, that just breaks my heart to think of someone going through life that way. And I get that, because I did do that for quite some time, feeling like I needed to be different. I needed to fix myself. Something was obviously just not right. Why didn't anybody get me? And because of that, feeling like, okay, I need to make this go away. And if I wasn't so sensitive, these things wouldn't bother me and this wouldn't happen. And it's a horrible feeling to feel that way. So if we can release that and all of these others and come to, you know, embrace the trait, you know, who we are as highly sensing people, instead of in spite of, or that, you know, once I get that taken care of, then I'll be okay. So that is what I work, you know, with people a lot on, is this need to not be sensitive, to not be so different, but unique. That word is usually accepted pretty well, right? We can use unique as, oh, you're so unique, or that is so unique. It's seen usually as a positive thing. But when we say different or sensitive, we get that kind of like negative connotation. So we need to flip that for ourselves, for our self-acceptance and our self-compassion, and for the world. It needs to have a different focus, a different recognition that sensitivity is an amazing thing for so many different reasons. So let's look at, how it is that we've come to these understandings or these statements. And I've talked about, our programming, especially the first 7 years of our lives, all these things that we hear over and over and over, or we experience, we try something, wow, that didn't work. Maybe I need to do that differently next time, especially after several times. You just learn to, not show those feelings or not say what you're really thinking because someone's going to say something negative about it or they're not going to get it. And then you get frustrated with that and you start to shift. So there's a lot of places that we learn these thoughts, this mindset that we have that we're not okay. And a lot of that is cultural. A lot of it's from our families, all of these expectations that if we follow what culture says, what our families say, we have these expectations for us that are optimum that quite often don't resonate for us. The things that we're supposed to be doing as we understand our culture and our family expectations or our friends or whatever in the workplace, you're supposed to be this way. Quite often we don't resonate with that. And so we can feel wrong and bad about that rather than saying, oh yeah, that doesn't work for me. But what really works for me is this. And let me explain that to you and show you why that's amazing. So working with various leaders as a coach, that's come up a lot lately with this idea of like, wow, I'm in this leadership role. I don't even know how I got here. I don't see myself as a good leader, as a strong leader, because I don't do, XYZ like all these other people I see. I do things this way. And, helping people to realize that those ways of doing things might be just as good, if not better, than what the mainstream is, or what those old, long-standing expectations. Do it this way, do it this way. You say, well, no, that doesn't work for me. I do it this way. That could be so much more powerful, especially when it comes from your heart. So, letting go of those expectations that were put upon us, but that we also developed on our own just by our own interactions and, reactions to things that were happening. So if we can try to, reframe some of these things to something more positive that resonates with us more, that's actually helpful instead of, pushing us down, depleting our energy, lowering our frequency. That's the goal. So I would encourage you, if you can right now, actually, just a little quick exercise. If you have a piece of paper or your note, profile program, whatever, however you'd like to do it. If you can do this, just take a moment and jot down some of those ideas. Maybe they're the same as the ones that I mentioned earlier, but whatever those negative statements are that you realize, if you really think about it for a minute, like, yeah, okay, I tend to tell myself or believe these things that are not helpful. And just go ahead and jot those down. And I'll give you just a minute to do that. Sometimes we don't recognize what those thoughts are until we start asking ourselves, what am I telling myself about this? What are those things I've heard so much that they've actually become kind of my own mantras that aren't helping me? And I realize, yeah, they're not true, but they've been in there so long, they don't want to go away. So once you've gotten a few of those things written down, now we can look at what those are and see what we can do instead. So as a basic example, I'm too sensitive. Because you probably heard that how many times in your life, right? Oh, you're just too sensitive. You need to grow thicker skin. So if we look at that very basic example, I'm too sensitive. How can we reframe that so that it's not so negatively impactful anymore, that it doesn't drag us down? So if we honor our trait, we don't have to say, oh, I'm not sensitive, or I don't want anyone to know I'm sensitive or highly sensing, but we can shift that and say, yes, I am very sensitive. And it's amazing because, and then we can fill in the blank, because you would have a lot of different answers to that, how that is for you, which is, again, something that I work with clients on all the time. It's like, well, how does this actually benefit you? What are some of the amazing parts of being highly sensing that maybe you don't even recognize are part of, having that trait, but being able to acknowledge those things. yeah, I am very sensitive and I like that, and people like it when I know what's needed in a situation or what somebody in particular needs to feel better. I'm the one that will know that something needs to be done before anybody else realizes it. And my sensitivity, my being very sensitive, allows me to do that. So if you look at all of those things you might have just written down in your little list, or if you're watching this later, if you are not able to do this as you're listening and you write it down later, you can come back and do this. But if you spend just a couple minutes doing that, just identify what are those things that you're telling yourself, and then see how you can shift those to something that is positive. So if we go back to another example from earlier, no one will understand me if I am who I am, if I show, who I am. That could feel really true if we don't counter that. If we don't say, wait a second, let's look at that differently. What if I express myself as a sensitive person and honor that and be true to myself? Would people potentially accept me, validate me, support me? And the reality is, yes, if we are really owning who we are and what we have to offer, and we present that to the world, not that there's not going to be some people who are just, in their own universe and not paying attention to anybody else, or they're trying to get a negative result and they'll say something. But for the most part, if we really honor who we are and we present that as strong and, I'm okay with it, I don't care if you're not, I am, then what we present to everyone else comes across in such a better way that we can get that support and we can get that maybe not full understanding if they're not coming from the same place, but they can see that in you and recognize that, yeah, okay, you have a lot to offer. So trying to shift all of those negative thoughts is so helpful. And again, unless we know what they are, we can't shift them. So any of those thoughts that are in there, so spend a little bit of time doing that, where you just say, what am I telling myself? And if you're not coming up with any and you're like, well, I don't know that I tell myself anything. Think about all the things that you heard growing up, that you heard in relationships, that you heard at work. What are those things that you know that you've reacted to, and in some cases maybe even tried to forget, but I'm sure you haven't fully forgotten. But what are all those things that you've heard so much in your life? You just need to suck it up and let it roll off your back. Make such a big deal about everything. Any of these things that you might have heard, write those down. And then as you're doing that, say, have I taken any of these to heart? Do I maybe believe these a little too much? Are they getting in my way? And some of them might be pretty obvious. You might say, oh, yep, I've believed that my whole life. Oh, okay, right. That didn't come from me. That came from my programming, from my family, from school, from my colleagues, or my supervisors, or whatever it is. You can start to recognize what those thoughts might be that you're carrying with you. And that is what allows us to shift those things. So once you have that awareness and recognize, oh, I am following those things. Now I can shift to what I know is the reality and make that my new belief, my new mindset, my new thought. So I think that's a really powerful exercise. If you can spend that time, and I know you have a busy schedule, but just spend, 5 or 10 minutes doing that, jotting all that down and seeing what comes up, and then reframe those. What do I say to myself instead that feels resonant? And you will know, as I've talked before, when you get quiet and you pay attention to your body, when you say something or think about an idea or whatever it is, you are going to know that something is not quite right. So go ahead and just spend the time to do that, and it will be really, really powerful. Okay, so I'm going to shift just a little bit. Okay. What I would like to do now is take you through just a little exercise just to help you to release some of those thoughts and to really honor yourself. So go ahead and get in a comfortable position, close down your eyes if you can, stare off if you've got people looking at you, or maybe you're at your desk at work or something. Get where you can just be comfortable if you're still able to listen. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Take those, a couple nice deep breaths and allow the air to come into your lungs and radiate throughout your whole body. Just letting love and light, supportive, high vibration energy in through the nose, filling up the belly, and then radiating to every cell in your body. And with every exhale, just release anything that's not serving you, anything that's not helping you at all. Just let it all go. Just settle in and see if you can feel your heart area opening and allowing in this support and loving energy. And then as you continue that inflow of loving, supportive light and energy and the releasing of anything that doesn't serve, just allow that to kind of become a natural flow. And then you can repeat to yourself out loud if you want, or just kind of follow along, just absorbing what I say. You can say it, quietly to yourself in your mind. And just say some statements to set in these new thoughts, this new mindset of being highly sensing in such an amazing way. So as you exhale, either say to yourself or out loud or think, I am very sensitive, and that's amazing. If I let my true light shine, it's an amazing gift to the world. If I let people really know who I am, they'll probably be amazed. I am highly sensing for a very good reason. My sensitivity allows me to help others and myself. There are many others like me, and we are sensitive for a reason. I value my sensitivity and let it shine. I love all of the little things I notice because of my sensitivity. There are so many things I would miss out on if I wasn't as sensitive. People who are not highly sensing will not get me completely, and that's okay. I embrace my trait and shine my light to the world. So those are just a few examples of phrases that we can instill and practice repeating them over and over until they become true, until we recognize, yes, this is my new reality. These are the things that are true about me and my sensitivity. So hopefully that just gave you a little bit of a boost, a little energy boost, and get you in that mindset of looking at how amazing you are because of this fabulous trait of sensitivity. Thank you for joining me as always. And please do reach out if you're really struggling with loving yourself, with feeling so stuck in needing to be different, feeling like you just don't fit in and it just isn't working for you. I would love to chat with you, and the link is in the show notes for right after. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again next time as we work toward thriving as our highly sensing selves. Have a wonderful day.